stamped an end date on. But it's a new day, and maybe they'll have a change of heart, see the light, and come clean. We'll just have to wait and see. With that, I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, hello, Madam Chair. Welcome back.
Hello, ranking member.
Long time no see. I hardly recognize you guys. Where the hell have you been? It's good to see you back on back in the Capitol building. We've been looking everywhere for you guys. I mean, seriously, we were worried. We actually started handing out missing person posters. Nobody has seen you for 8 weeks. But hey, I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad that you survived your nice 2-month paid vacation while Democrats stayed in Washington to try to end this shutdown. But here's the deal. Most Americans think that what Republicans did, skipping town in a shutdown, has been one of the most disgraceful, embarrassing, pathetic eras in the modern history of the House of Representatives. For 8 weeks, Speaker Johnson let you all stay home while Americans missed paychecks, skipped meals, and watched their costs explode. Republicans quit their jobs. They disappeared. And they can argue all they want that the House did its job and that's why they went home. It's just BS. The House didn't do its job. If Republicans had done their job, we wouldn't be here right now voting on a different bill than the one that they passed. But instead of working with us on trying to end the shutdown, they all just left. They abandoned their offices, but more importantly, they abandoned the American people. And just so people know, while Republicans sat on their couches waiting for someone to tell them what to do, House Democrats were here. We were here working. We were meeting with regular people, talking with folks about next year's skyrocketing health insurance premiums. I've been back and forth to my district almost every weekend. People showed me the letters that they got on their premiums. They're doubling and they're tripling, not because of Democrats, but because Republicans are failing to act. They extended tax breaks for billionaires in like a nanosecond. That got done. They wasted no time helping out the well-off and the well-connected. But when it came time to help regular people, to extending the health care tax credits that 24 million people depend on, they didn't just say no, they shut the government down over it. Republicans skipped town for 8 weeks because Democrats had the gall to ask you to do something to help regular people. And you know what? It's a real shame. Republicans are selling out middle America, selling out working people at a time when affordability is the #1 issue. And as we see record levels of inequality in this country, Republicans are selling out working people all so they can do the bidding of the billionaire class. I mean, look what's happening. Trump's reckless tariffs continue to wreak havoc on the economy. He says food prices are way down. That's coming from a guy who dines on caviar at Mar-a-Lago. He's never shopped for groceries a day in his life. He doesn't have to pick between plastic or paper. But his tariffs are costing the average American household over $1,200 this year. And next year, it will be $1,600. That's money for groceries, for bills, for rent, taken out of the American people's wallets. And he's not even hiding it. He's rubbing it in. Trump is literally renovating his bathroom in marble and gold and posting about it on social media while regular people are getting letters saying that their health care premiums are going up by $1,000. People are struggling to stay afloat, and this guy's golfing. He had Air Force One fly over a football game. How much did that cost? He shut down the airspace while regular travelers are stranded all over the country. The administration is funneling $40 billion to bail out Argentina. Republicans are literally subsidizing an entirely different country instead of keeping families in North Carolina or Minnesota or Texas or Indiana from going bankrupt if they face emergency hospital bills. And then giving your donors a fancy new ballroom at the White House while moms and dads can't afford to put food on the table. And speaking of putting food on the table, Trump illegally withheld food assistance from 42 million Americans, kids, veterans, seniors, working families. 2 federal court orders demanded that he pay out these benefits in full. But he would rather appeal to the highest court in the land to starve people out than to simply provide them with the food assistance that he is legally obligated to send to American families. Like, who does that? I mean, that's the Republican policy position. We'll give you your food if you let us take away your health care. I mean, who the hell thinks like that? And I know Republicans don't care. I know your donors have private doctors and insurance CEOs on speed dial. But could you at least pretend to do something about the 20 million Americans who are about to see their health care premiums soar? Or the 4 million people who could lose their coverage altogether? You don't even have a health care plan. You've been promising one for over a decade, and we've never seen it because it doesn't exist. Or maybe it's simply just hiding behind the missing appropriation bills that this Republican majority hasn't passed. I don't know. But what I do know is this. Republicans have been in charge for 292 days. That's 292 days to do something, anything, to lower costs, to bring down prices, to make America more affordable, to do something about health care, tariffs, grocery prices, rent, or heating bills. And what did you do? You handed out tax breaks to billionaires and took the longest paid vacation in modern history. Even your own colleagues called it out. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene says you guys messed up. When Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks you've gone too far, you might want to rethink things. And by the way, you also refused to even swear in our new colleague, the duly elected representative from Arizona's 7th District, Adelita Grijalva. Why? Because she will represent the 218th signature on a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. Oh, we didn't forget about those either. Don't worry. We won't forget that the Speaker of the House refused to swear in the first Latina ever elected to represent Arizona because he was more concerned about protecting pedophiles than getting the truth out there for the survivors. But that's just the perfect metaphor for the Trump economy. If you're rich and powerful, you get ahead. If you're a regular person, Republicans will not lift a finger to help you. And I want to be crystal clear. House Democrats represent something very different. We refuse to accept a government that moves at lightning speed to give tax breaks to billionaires, but then goes home for 8 weeks when it comes to ensuring health care is affordable for working families. We've said it from day one of this shutdown. We will sit down with any Republicans, anytime, any place, anywhere, in order to find a path forward that would reopen the government and finds a solution to Republicans' health care crisis. But we're not just going to roll over and accept your way, your my way or the highway approach to governance. If you need our votes, you need to work with us. But you refuse because you're more interested in extremism than governance. But here's the thing. The beautiful thing about politics is that you don't really lose until you quit trying. And Democrats are going to keep trying because people are counting on us to do something about this healthcare crisis. And when their healthcare premiums double and triple, and they will, and your constituents, I'm sure you're getting the calls, Republicans will own it. Every premium spike, every family forced off coverage, every life put at risk, you own it. And good luck going home to your constituents to explain why you sold them out in order to appease the millionaires and billionaires. Extending these tax credits is the right thing to do. It is the moral thing to do. 13 House Republicans have said it needs to be done because soaring health care costs will devastate our constituents, whether they live in a red state or a blue state. So I want people to know that we will keep fighting. I will keep fighting. My colleagues on this committee on the Democratic side will keep fighting for a government that puts the working class first and for a Congress that actually shows up and does their damn job. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. And I want to welcome all the members. I should have said that. I'm very pleased to see everyone. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. And now welcome our first panel, Chairman Cole and Ranking Member DeLauro from the Committee on Appropriations. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask that you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Cole, I welcome your testimony and welcome you back to the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, and esteemed members of the Rules Committee, I thank you for your warm welcome and your kind invitation to testify today. As members of this committee are all too painfully aware, for the last 6 weeks, the federal government has been shut down. Millions of workers have gone unpaid. Air traffic control functions have slowed to a near halt. SNAP benefits expired, forcing millions of Americans to either find assistance from food banks or else go hungry. Seniors saw telepath resources suspended, and Head Start education programs for children have been closing. These are just a few of the examples of the harm being inflicted on our nation, yet it didn't have to be this way. Nearly 2 months ago, the House passed a continuing resolution that would have kept the government open and operating. This would have allowed Congress time to keep working on the FY 2026 appropriations process through regular order, but instead, Senate Democrats blocked its passage. The result of this political temper tantrum has been the longest government shutdown in the nation's history. For 42 days and counting, Democrats have held the country hostage. Make no mistake, all the pain, all the suffering, and all the difficulty Americans have endured in these past 6 weeks could have and should have been avoided. Instead, the hardship and damage caused by an intentional choice made by Democratic leadership. Minority leaders Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer led their caucus to shut down the government. And for 42 days, the American people have borne the brunt of that decision and have been mere pawns at the partisan hands of the Democrats. At long last, reason has prevailed, and the measure before us will finally end this pointless shutdown. Today's bill will not only reopen the government, but it will also move the FY 2026 appropriations process forward, representing a return to regular order. This legislation includes 3 bipartisan, bicameral, full-year appropriations measures covering the military, construction, and veterans affairs, legislative branch, and agriculture, rural development, and food and drug administration divisions. These 3 bills have been negotiated between the 2 chambers and reflect a final, full, and bipartisan agreement. With passage of these 3 divisions, we will have full-year funding in place for many of our most crucial programs. Military construction needs will be met for a full year, as will medical programs for our nation's veterans. The legislative branch will be fully funded, including critical funding enhancements for the Capitol Police and for member security. The Department of Agriculture and Food and Drug Administration will also be fully funded, as will the WIC program to ensure that pregnant women and young children will get the food and nutrition they need to survive and to thrive. Importantly, the agreement encompasses community project funding in both the military construction and agriculture divisions, reflecting Congress's clear control over the power of the purse. Inclusion of these projects was a high priority for the Appropriations Committee, and it accomplishes this goal while holding the line on overall spending levels. We also break Senator Schumer's beloved end-of-the-year holiday omnibus habit. No more 1,000-page spending behemoths at midnight. Republicans have restored an open, line-by-line process. As we continue to make strong progress on full-year FY 26 bills, we've included a continuing resolution to fund the remainder of the government through January 30th, 2026. This extension supports our ongoing work on this front, especially given the time lost during the Democratic shutdown. The simplest truth today is this: reopening the government will put an end to the chaos Democratic leadership has inflicted on Americans. It will also ensure that SNAP funds are made available to ensure that no American goes hungry. It will reestablish control of the skies, keeping our nation's air traffic moving during the holiday season. It will pay federal workers and American military personnel. And it will ensure that the government can continue to provide critical services for our constituents like roads, parks, child care, water projects, infrastructure improvements, scientific research, job training, and countless others. I look forward to continuing the FY 2026 appropriations process in the coming weeks, and I hope that having seen the consequences of this historic shutdown on the American people, it's not a political stunt that will be repeated in the future. I thank each of you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member DeLaura, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I'm so glad to be here alongside my fellow appropriator, Chairman Cole, whose partnership I appreciate it. If I can just say, first of all, welcome back. And one point about the shutdown. It's been several months where Democratic leadership has called for an opportunity to sit down, whether it has been with the House and Senate leadership or with the President of the United States, where there was just that one meeting. He reneged on the first meeting that he was involved so that we could sort out a bipartisan agreement in trying to move forward. And the offer was there to meet anytime, any place, anywhere, so that we could really try to move forward. As I said, rebuked at every turn. And so the shutdown stands firmly in the process of the president, who rather shut down the government rather than negotiate. I'll just give you two quotes, and you can check on the quotes. He first said, it's a waste of time to meet with Leader Jeffries and Leader Schumer. The second thing he said, and he admonished his Republican colleagues and said, you need to jam the Republican continuing resolution down the throats of Democrats. I don't make it up. Those are his words. Anyway, I want to talk about why I oppose this bill. I oppose this bill because it does nothing to address the Republican health care crisis that will send costs skyrocketing for more than 20 million Americans in a matter of weeks. No, nothing has changed since yesterday's Senate vote. Healthcare costs are still poised to double or even triple for some folks practically overnight, worsening the cost of living crisis manufactured by President Trump. There is no restoration of premium subsidies, the tax credits. This bill is an empty promise, as is the promise for a vote in the Senate, and as the Speaker said, no guarantee of a vote on premium subsidies in the House. All across this country, families are struggling to navigate an affordability crisis that President Trump refuses to address. As a matter of fact, I think within the last 24 hours, he talked about affordability as a con job. Get out there, talk to the people of this nation, Mr. President. Energy prices are up, grocery prices are up, housing costs are up. Everything is more expensive, and now on top of that, the Republicans plan to squeeze families even harder. The report today came out that talked about families in the U.S. living paycheck to paycheck. And really, the president went to the Supreme Court to deprive kids of food, unbelievable, and now wants to deny their parents health care. This is a point, I've heard it twice already this evening here, that whether or not the government was open or shut, there was $6 billion in a contingency fund passed by Democrats and Republicans for food stamps to be used in the event of occasion like this. It was the administration, President Trump refused to let those monies flow to the people who need it the most. It was not a question of whether or not the government was open or not, and let's stop aligning the two of those efforts. In my district, a mother of two named Renee Shalis, she will see her annual premium cost go up by $24,000 next year. She got her letter. That's $2,000 more per month. On top of caring for her two children, she is primary caregiver for the children's father, a brain cancer survivor who is physically and mentally unable to work. She is working tirelessly to do the right thing by her family, but she's already stretched thin. She literally cannot afford this. I just read you a couple of headlines from the Connecticut Press, New Haven Register. How much more can we cut back? Connecticut families brace for soaring health insurance premiums. The Connecticut Public Mirror, for middle-income Connecticut residents, sticker shock looms with ACA health subsidies set to disappear. Channel 3, Connecticut. Richfield couple faces tripling health care costs as cancer survivor needs continued care. That is a reality. And Renee's story is not an outlier. This is going to make life significantly harder for people all across this country, in every state, and yes, in every district. There are some 24 million Americans who get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. The Republican plan puts us on a path to destroying the Affordable Care Act, which, quite frankly, they have been trying to do unsuccessfully for 15 years now. Some of you may not think that health care is related to this continuing resolution, and I beg to differ. Take a look at the authorizing titles in the continuing resolution. There are more than 50 pages worth just dealing with health care. We can solve this problem in this bill if we choose to. And isn't the continuing resolution in the jurisdiction of the Appropriations Committee? You know, the entire House was marginalized in this process. Senate Republicans abruptly called off talks in the middle of negotiations, made their own bills public before reaching an agreement with all four corners. Unprecedented in the modern era. And yet they made the House constitutionally impotent in moving forward. In one of the most egregious examples of something the House was not even aware of before the bills became public, the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee secretly added language in the legislative branch bill from the Senate Majority Leader without the consent of the chair or ranking members of the subcommittee or the full committee. That allows Republican senators to sue the government for their involvement in the January 6th insurrection. And regardless of anyone's opinion on what happened on January 6th, it should be unacceptable to every member of the House that the Senate can secretly add language to a bill without even notifying us. The result, legislative branch bill that includes a provision to give senators who may have participated in the insurrection as much as $1 million payout each, while they excluded a provision to hang a plaque honoring the police officers who put their lives on the line to defend our democracy from that same insurrection. The Military Construction Division excludes $51.7 billion, which was in the House bill, for advanced funding for the Toxic Exposure Fund for 2027. This is a fund that helps victims, I'll wrap up, and victims of burn pits and Agent Orange get the care they deserve. In our markup in the summer, and the Chair Cole will remember this, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, Chair Carter negotiated a compromise to include this funding. The Senate took it out before abandoning negotiations altogether. Simply wrong. We have provided advanced funding for the medical care for veterans for the last 15 years. It's Veterans Day today, and this bill doesn't even meet the funding level that President Trump and OMB Director vote restored. Reason why we're here, I have one last point to make. Chairman Cole and I, is because the power of the purse belongs to the Congress. This package fails to protect that authority. Democrats fought to prevent President Trump and OMB Director from stealing from our communities, withholding funding that was approved by Democrats and Republicans, blocking the issuing of illegal pocket rescissions, preventing President Trump from unilaterally reneging on any appropriations bill. It does nothing, this package, to address these problems. You can't honestly expect Democrats to go along with any bipartisan funding proposal that can be rescinded with a party line vote, not after trust has been broken in this process. The main reason I oppose this bill is because it does not address the health care crisis that President Trump created, serious concerns with appropriations divisions. I encourage my colleagues to oppose this measure, and I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. Chairman Cole, with respect to the agencies that would operate under a CR, this bill keeps the government running at the same level it's been at since early 2024. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it was President Biden who initially signed these funding levels into law. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
This bill came out of the Senate with bipartisan support, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, passing this legislation will take away any ambiguity about pay for America's war fighters. It'll bring certainty for SNAP payments. It will guarantee that air traffic controllers, federal law enforcement officers, and other federal workers will receive back pay. Is that correct?
That too is correct.
And there's no other solution on the table that has the bipartisan backing of the Senate. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
So voting against this bill would be a vote to continue that uncertainty to our military, SNAP recipients, and federal workers. Is that not the case?
That is indeed the case.
One more question. I have been astonished to hear our colleagues say that this Republican health care crisis was manufactured by President Trump. I mean, I'm sure if I asked the clerks to read that back, that's what they say. Would you refresh our memory as to what created the Affordable Care Act and how did we get here as a result of what happened during COVID? Would you mind doing that? President Trump was not in office in either of those cases. Is that correct?
That too is correct, Madam Chair. I'm trying to limit how much time I use and how outrageous some of the statements I've heard are. The reality is goes back to a fundamental defect in Obamacare itself, which is constantly the Affordable Care Act has made health care unaffordable. Been doing it for 15 years. The basic subsidies are in law. Our friends on the other side during COVID decided we've got a crisis underway. We're going to add a subsidy on top of a subsidy.
The subsidy to what was called the Affordable Care Act, which was never affordable because we taxpayers who pay for our own insurance were subsidizing, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So again, it's a subsidy on top of a subsidy. Our friends added it during COVID. COVID is over. They set a date certain that the subsidies would run out. They chose the date.
And the date certain was?
December 31st of this year. So they chose that date. By the way, they did it without any Republican votes, without any consideration of reforms, without any effort to hold down the price. I mean, they literally are the big insurance companies' best friends. They funneled hundreds of billions of dollars into these things. But again, this is their legislation. They wrote it. They extended it. They added a subsidy to it. And they set the date at which that subsidy was to run out. President Trump certainly wasn't president when either the original legislation was created or this additional subsidy was added. So to blame it on him instead of looking in the mirror and blaming it on yourself is the height of hypocrisy. Yeah, this is a Democratic manufactured crisis that they're blaming on everybody but themselves. And at the same time, as they're doing that, they've decided, well, I guess we don't need to pay our men and women in uniform that are defending us. Thank God President Trump twice has pulled rabbits out of a hat and made sure that didn't happen. Or we're not going to pay our air traffic controllers or our meat inspectors or our Capitol Police that they celebrate so constantly and rightfully. So, I mean, come on. This is a totally manufactured crisis by Democrats. They've kept the government shut down. Finally, in the United States Senate, 8 pretty courageous people said, I'm not going to be part of this charade anymore. I'm going to vote to open the government. We can negotiate on these other issues. Majority Leader Thune, our own speaker, made it clear we're willing to do it. We're not going to, by the way, sign off on something that has been an utter disaster. And what the Democrats basically have asked for here is like $1.5 trillion over 10 years in exchange for a 4 or 7 week CR, or now one that will go a little bit longer since they've wasted most of the time. So, I mean, we shouldn't have any doubt about who created the crisis, who's perpetuating the crisis, and who's trying to capitalize on it politically. So I hope that answers your question.
That answers my question very well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
Yeah, so you just made me think of something, Madam Chair. You said that this is merely an extension of the January 2024 spending bill, that basically it's the same, everything's the same. I think that's what and the chairman just agreed with that. Does that mean that all the federal workers that were fired have been put back to work?
And under this bill, yeah, people that were let go or rifted. And by the way,
from the beginning of the
you
year,
created, my friend, the crisis that caused that to happen.
I just want to know whether all the people that were fired from the beginning of the year are put back to work, whether or not the cuts in the consumer
there are provisions made to rehire
question.
people, but again, let's be clear
Mr.
about who
McGovern,
put
please
people
let him
out of
answer.
work.
Well, I can't get my question out, so I will let him answer if he lets me ask the question.
I thought I did. I apologize if I did not.
I want to know whether or not the cuts of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau are restated, or the cuts to NIH, I go right down all the Doge cuts. I mean, have they been put
The
back?
provisions that Democrats asked for in terms of firing in the Senate are in the bill.
No, well, that's not what this. That's not my question. But
look, if you want to be against the bill, that's perfectly fine.
The chairwoman just said that basically this is the same as all the funding that we voted for in January of 2024. I'm just asking you, the stuff that we voted for in January 2024, some of it is no longer there. And some of it, I think, has been illegally cut by the president. Mr. Lauro, do you want to give me a straight answer to that question?
Absolutely. This is really quite remarkable. Since January until now, and the number may have gone up, over 220,000 federal employees have been let go. They have most of them let go, some who took a buyout. The other fact of the matter is it's not the same budget because and we have a tracker. I can give you documentation that showed you $410 billion that we appropriated. Democrats, Republicans signed into law by the President of the United States. And that money has been terminated. It has been delayed. And it's $410 billion. I'll give you the tracker. It's about 25 or 26 pages. And you can go down and take a look at every appropriations bill, and you can find out what program has been terminated, what's been gone. And that since January has nothing to do with this crisis that the Republicans have initiated and shutting down the government because they don't want to negotiate on health care costs.
So thank you for correcting the record. It's not the same that we voted
No.
for. But in addition to that, was this slush fund for senators who might have been involved with January 6th?
Right. They snuck that in.
Was that in
No,
January
it was not
23?
in it. It was not in, and I will just say, in all fairness, that was done by the Senate.
okay.
They snuck it in, and apparently there are 2 violations attached to it. We could be losing about $8 million.
So, Chairman, let me just ask you this question. Do you think the House should have been here these last several weeks trying to pass appropriation bills?
No, we had to wait until the Senate acted on what we sent them. It took the Senate a long time, largely because our Democratic friends used the filibuster, which they claim they oppose, to force us to get to 60 votes.
Well,
we finally did, or they finally did in the Senate. So, no, there wasn't much for us to do
we have
until
9
they...
bills, don't we?
Can I finish my answer? There wasn't anything for us to do until the Senate acted. And the only reason it didn't act more quickly, under their own rules, the filibuster requires them to get to 60, the Democrats withheld their votes. So, I mean, it's Democrats that have kept us out of session. We sent this over in plenty of time. It's not like it was a last-minute emergency thing. I think, as the chairwoman pointed out, we passed this on September the 19th, well ahead of the time, sent it to them, and they couldn't get anything done.
How many
appropriation
bills do we
cooperate?
How many more appropriation bills do we have to pass in the House?
We have passed everyone out of committee.
Right.
We have passed over 60% of the funding across the floor. We asked to have additional time. That time has largely been wasted. We in this bill actually passed 3 bills across the floor if we're able to do that later this week. So we were making actually pretty good progress. The difference is my friends on the other side in the Senate and here decided they would add things to appropriations that are not in our jurisdiction or our expertise. Look, we don't deal with Medicaid. That was actually done in the big, beautiful bill. We don't deal with that in Appropriations Committee. We do not deal with subsidies for Obamacare. They're not within our jurisdiction. So you added things that were
We're
unconnected.
talking about 2 different things.
Can I finish my answer? You were added things that were unconnected to appropriations, and then were shocked when they weren't dealt with in Appropriations Bill. They belong somewhere else. It's my understanding both the Speaker and the Majority Leader, and frankly the President, have said, we'll negotiate with you when you reopen the government, but we're not going to sit here and negotiate after you shut down the government and threaten us. Nobody does that. You didn't do that.
Mr. LaRue, maybe you can answer the question. How many appropriation bills?
9 are left to go.
Have we,
9 are left to go.
We could have done them during.
Well, they're in the committee, but they haven't been to the floor.
Answer without any interruption. We've passed everyone across the out of committee. We've passed 3 across the floor. They collectively add up to over 60%. By the way, a far better record than the Democrats in the Senate had last year when they were in control. They didn't pass a single appropriations bill out. So yeah, we're moving pretty well.
We have 9 bills to go.
Let me just ask.
We have 9.
The question I just want to make sure. The question I asked that doesn't get answered is how many do we have left to do on the floor?
We have 9 bills to do across the floor.
I'm talking
that are about 40% of federal spending.
Madam Chair, I mean, I'm asking Mr. Lauro a question, and we can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was directed to me. I apologize.
And I just want to know, the question I asked Mr. Cole, which he didn't want to answer, but I'll ask you, couldn't we have been doing stuff on the floor
Absolutely.
these last 8
Absolutely.
weeks? Right?
There has been so much wasted time, even in the process of the appropriations bills. And we did pass them in committee. And hours and hours and hours about poison pill riders that were done. These were unilaterally partisan bills that we were faced with. And when, not maybe, I don't know how many weeks ago, when the 4 corners, Chairman Cole, myself, Chairman Collins, and Ranking Member Murray, we sat down, the 4 of us together, and this is what we said we would do. We talked about these 3 bills, and we wanted to deal with the top lines, and we did. We got that, and we working through the bills. The staff worked through the bills. The second thing that we said, and there was consensus in that room, consensus, that what we would do is have a bipartisan continuing resolution. And that bipartisan continuing resolution would consider what Democratic priorities were and also deal with the power of the purse. We said that in that room. The next thing that we know, we were slammed with a partisan continuing resolution bill that did not take into consideration any Democratic priorities, nor did it address any of the issues of the power of the purse.
But let me just say, I think what Mr. Cole won't say, but I think, I'm not sure he really believes this, but the bottom line is, I think in answer to the question of whether we should have been here doing other work, the answer is, of course, we should have been here doing other work. By not being here doesn't make things go faster. I have another question here, and that is that according to the Congressional Budget Office, extending the ACA enhanced premium tax credits for 1 year would cost between $25 and $35 billion. And I just want to know how you guys were able to find $4.5 trillion in tax cuts in your reconciliation bill, with more than $1.4 trillion in tax cuts for people with incomes over $500,000 per year, but choose not to extend these health care tax credits that working people rely on. I mean, that's 56 times more on tax cuts for the wealthy than it would have cost just to extend health care tax credits for a year. I mean, I think in your district, Mr. Cole, I think there's like 48,000 of your constituents rely on the ACA for their health care. And they're getting bills like my constituents are, like Mr. Laura's are. I have 37,000, you have 48,000 in your district, and in my district, Massachusetts, I've got 37,000. So kind of comparable. I mean, I've gotten calls from constituents who are, you know,
Crying.
out of their minds trying to figure out how they're going to pay for this. I mean, this week I received, you know, this is one of them wrote me, this week I received the Massachusetts Health Connector open enrollment paperwork. The cost of the plan I'm currently on is going up by 62%. Another person said, I just received my letter and my monthly cost has gone from $1,287 to $3,026 for the next year. As a working family with a daughter who has an autoimmune disease, we're struggling. I'm working 50+ hours just to pay the insurance. Another person, if I continue on the same plan I am on now, it will be 2.5 times more and be unaffordable. $15,000 plus a month is incredulous for one person's health premium. When I calculate my net income, not gross, it is beyond sustainable. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I know, but how do we reconcile the priorities that give us, you know, tax cuts for people who are well off, but when it comes to health care, and we can argue about whether the system can be better, I would prefer a different system. I would prefer Medicare for all. We've done it. We did a hearing when I was the chairman of the Rules Committee on that, and it was a very good hearing. But nonetheless, this is an immediate crisis. And I think people can't understand is how you can find in a nanosecond the money for tax cuts for people who are well off, but we can't find a way to just help middle-class working families get through this really difficult time. I mean, yeah, I mean...
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, the most immediate crisis in my district are the thousands of workers that you and your colleagues have put out of work that aren't getting a paycheck. That's the calls I get. I have thousands of them. They're the ones that keep the airplanes flying. They're the ones that do the National Weather Center.
No
they're
calls on
wondering
healthcare?
why they're not getting paid.
So you get no
when
calls
there
on
was legislation, we could have had these debates, we could have had these arguments. Why are they being held hostage? Why are you not willing to pay them? That's the calls I get.
So nobody
Why
calls
is
you
the
on
government
healthcare?
shutting down? Why do men and women in uniform who are deployed have to wonder whether or not their family at home is going to get a paycheck? That's on you. Look, this is the stuff you said you would never do.
So the 48,000
we would never shut down the government. We would never do
So
that.
of-
That's exactly what
of the
you've
fo-
done.
so of the
you're
48
putting thousands of people out of work.
of the
the
48,000
health care issue you're
No one-
talking about
no one-
is a subsidy that you passed on your own on top of other subsidies you said was COVID related. You said it would run out. We've said, okay, let's sit down and talk about fundamental changes here. But no, it's like we have to have our way. We have to have a guaranteed spending of $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years to exchange for you to pay people for 4 weeks in your original proposal.
So
we actually asked for 7.
You've tried over 50 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
The most immediate crisis in my project you've created.
Well,
my people
so-
aren't getting paid thanks to you and your colleagues.
So nobody in your district is complaining
I
to you
didn't
about the
say,
health care.
hey, people complain everywhere about everything.
we have a chance to
but
do something
you
about
asked me
that.
what the most important calls I get is why am I not getting paid?
And we have a
Why
chance
am
to
I
do
being
something about
forcibly
this?
furloughed? There's important work for me to do.
Here's the thing, we have a chance to do something to help millions of people afford their health insurance, and what you're all telling me is you're not interested.
I thought that we had affordable health care.
We
I am
did.
interested.
When you
I have
when
a
you guys
whole series of them,
when you guys
but they have nothing to do with the
you
appropriations
guys-
bill. They have nothing to do with the work of my committee. We do not do that at my committee.
You all extended.
But you're willing
you all
to
voted
hijack our committee.
You all voted to extend tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, make them permanent, but you could not extend these
you got?
for people. Mr. Laurel.
I'm just to say you got 13 members, 13 Republican members of the House who have said allowing the tax credits to lapse without a clear path forward, there was no clear path forward, would risk harm to those we represent. These are 13 members of the Republican conference who are scared to death that's what's going to happen in their districts. You've got, and in the chairman's district, a 60-year-old couple that makes $82,000 is going to see insurance premiums rise by $17,000 unless the Congress prevents it. Now, if that's okay, and you've got other members in the same situation, we can go down district by district and let you know what it is that is out there for this. And members who serve on the Appropriations Committee as well.
All 13 of those members voted to pay people.
Yeah.
They voted to keep the government open. None of you did, except for one member in Maine who's now retiring because he's being beaten up so badly
the House and the
for
Senate
paying
and
people.
Madam
Exactly.
Chair, with all due respect,
Right.
when we debated the ACA, you controlled over an hour at a time. And you want to cut me off, that's fine. My constituents are getting screwed by what is happening here in this Congress or what is not happening in this Congress.
And every member-
they send me
members
here to
have to.
fight for them because they're going to lose their health care or they're not going to be able to afford their health care. This is a big deal. And the indifference on this shown by the Republican majority in this House and by the guy in the White House who's remodeling bathrooms and building
$40 billion
Taj Mahal,
to Argentina.
I mean, it is ridiculous. But I'm just saying, I want to point for the historical record. I'm not getting the same courtesy that the chairwoman received when we did the ACA.
Just listen to the American people. Last Tuesday, they made their voices heard on these issues. And you ought to take heed with what happened last Tuesday.
Mr. McGovern, what Mr. Cole has pointed out, and I've pointed out, and others have pointed out, this was put in place by the Democrats. The cutoff of the subsidies was put in place by you, and I think we have debated this point.
Why?
Ms. Fishbach,
Okay.
Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
It's useless.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just, before I go any further, I just want to recognize, I think you mentioned, it is Veterans Day. So I want to wish all of the veterans happy Veterans Day.
We should pass the
and all of us.
advance funding.
I'm speaking.
I know
Okay.
you are.
But I think
Thank you
that
very much.
You know, all of us probably to be here had to miss events that we were going to be at, and so I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and sorry that we couldn't attend those veterans events to commemorate Veterans Day for them. So just for that, but I am, as the discussion goes on, am amazed at this because this Democrat shutdown is all over a simple, clean, continuing resolution.
Not clean.
6 weeks. 6 weeks
Not
clean.
clean.
Well, the Democrat alternative, ma'am, was $1.5 trillion worth of spending. So this was a clean 6 week CR. We could have had all of those discussions you're so concerned about.
Not
We
clean.
could have been doing that. And the simple fact is, there was a vote on September 19th. If you voted yes, you voted yes to keep government open. You voted yes to pay people. You voted yes to keep things moving along. You voted yes to continue the appropriations. If you voted no, which the Democrats, with the exception of one, voted no,
voted yes.
that shut down government.
You voted yes
So,
to allow it to
ma'am,
be money
ma'am,
was stolen.
Ma'am, I am speaking.
I hear you.
Okay. And I just wanted to say, you know, there's questions about whether or not we were working, and with all due respect,
You're not working.
you were looking in the wrong place because all of us were working. I was in DC. You looked in the wrong place. I was meeting with constituents. I was in my district part of the time meeting with constituents. So to imply that we were on a vacation is ridiculous. It's just ludicrous because our constituents know we were working. I mean, my staff, you know, I came, met with constituents here, met with constituents in the district, and I think pretty much every single one of the Republicans did. And so I find it just ridiculous, and those kinds of statements are just pure not accurate. I'll say it that way. But Mr. Cole, Chair Cole, has pointed out that the appropriations process is so incredibly important. It is the way we should be doing things. The Appropriations Committee was doing it. Just needed 6 more weeks on that clean CR so that we could continue to do it. We're going to pass the 3 that are going to be on this bill. We have some more. We're going to continue to do that. But that's the way things should be happening here. It is absolutely, it's regular order. We should be doing it. And I just had a couple of questions just for clarification for Mr. Cole. And so does this bill provide funding for SNAP?
Yes, it does.
Did the bill that we voted on September 19th provide funding for
Yes, it
SNAP?
did.
Yes. So if we had voted way back in September 19th, we would have taken care of that. So
Worth noting,
Lack
too,
of
a majority
understanding.
of both houses voted for that. 55 senators voted for that, and obviously a majority in this body because it passed here. So it's just simply a Senate rule that's been perverted and taken advantage of. A majority of Congress has voted consistently to keep the government open while these other issues can be dealt with. It's Democrats that decided to shut the government down.
And like I pointed out, simple fact, September 19th, you can check the record. Who voted yes, who voted no. Yes to keep the government open. And I've pointed that out repeatedly over the last few weeks, while we've been shut down, because it's a simple fact. It's not the rhetoric. It just, you can prove it by checking the record. And Mr. Cole, I was going to ask you about if both of those bills, so the September 19th bill would have paid the troops. The September 19th bill would have kept the government open. The September 19th bill would have kept the funding for veterans. And so we had that, and they chose to shut the government down. So, but, and so this bill is going to reopen. We're going to get our troops paid. We're going to get the Capitol Police paid. We're going to do what we need to. We're going to get back pay. We're going to, for the federal workers, and we are going to make sure that folks get their SNAP benefits. And so I appreciate that this has come forward, and so I would ask the other side to join us in opening the government back up so then we can have these discussions that you've been so concerned about, that you want to make sure it gets done. And I don't think that the proposals that you have actually solve the issue of increased health care insurance. It doesn't do it. We need to have more in-depth discussions about what's really going on about it. And so please join us in opening the government. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize Ms. Scanlon for her time of questioning.
Thank you. I would first yield to Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, we are happy to join with you. We want the government open. We just don't want millions of people to get screwed over on their health care insurance. So if you join with us, this is a crisis, by the way, that's right now. It's not 3 months from now or 6 months from now. It's right now. People have gotten their bills. People are making decisions whether they're going to forego their health care. So that is it. And the idea that we can't get well, there are 13 Republicans that at least have said that they support us on extending the benefits. We'll see whether, they did it for show or whether it's for real. But I think if you let the House work its will, I think a majority of Democrats or Republicans would vote to extend that tax credit. And millions of people won't lose their health care, won't get screwed over because of the indifference and the inaction of this Congress. You found it. You found the time. You found it acceptable to extend the expiring tax cuts for multimillionaires and billionaires, but you couldn't find it within your heart to extend this. So we're happy to join with you, but join with us too. If you want our votes, then we want to help working people afford their health insurance. I yield back to Ms. Scanlon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. As we're convening here for the first time in months, our nation's healthcare system is buckling under the combined attacks of over almost $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid that were rammed through in the big ugly bill this summer, the White House's unilateral cuts to congressionally approved spending for NIH, medical research, including pediatric cancer, and now the Republican refusal to extend the ACA tax credits that help millions of Americans afford their health insurance. And they're already seeing these health insurance premiums go up. As Mr. McGovern said, this is not something that can wait because families are enrolling now for next year. And the Republicans have refused to address this issue all year, not just since the shutdown occurred. They've refused to address it at all. And none of this is an accident. It's all by choice. Just like it was a choice by President Trump to defund SNAP benefits this month for the first time in history. For more than 60 years, through recessions, natural disasters, and even previous shutdowns, and including previous shutdowns under this president, the federal government has never missed a SNAP payment until now. And why? Because President Trump and congressional Republicans will pick their billionaire buddies over American families every damn time. So once again, with this bill, they're choosing to let healthcare premiums skyrocket and causing families to lose coverage. Look, there have been 2 big tax provisions set to expire this year, and they've taken up a lot of attention. One was tax cuts for billionaires, and the second was tax credits for American families. This summer, Speaker Johnson called us back to D.C. when we were supposed to be home for the 4th of July weekend because it was an emergency to pass this big, ugly bill which extended tax cuts for billionaires. But when it came time to extend tax credits for millions of Americans to help them afford health care, Speaker Johnson sent the House home for almost 2 months. And he won't commit to having a vote on those health care credits even after the government reopens. And again, that's a choice. For the last 42 days, while the Speaker has made clear that he has no interest in negotiating with Democrats to produce a bill capable of passing both houses, his job isn't just one house. It has to be able to pass both houses. While he's been refusing to do anything, the White House has been working overtime to use the shutdown to inflict as much pain as possible on the American people, particularly the most vulnerable of our neighbors. And again, that's a choice. The White House chose to try to fire more than 4,000 federal workers. That's a choice. The White House has threatened to withhold back pay to federal workers despite a 2019 bill that would prevent that. That's a choice. This White House chose to withhold SNAP benefits for 42 million Americans. It has pressured states not to advance those benefits. It has threatened grocers with penalties if they offer discounts to struggling SNAP beneficiaries. It has defied court orders to fund SNAP benefits, and it has appealed every one of those decisions every step of the way. Those are all choices, and again, never before has an administration blocked SNAP benefits. They have always tried to make sure those go out because the funding, in fact, is available. But this is what happens when governing becomes a game. And games are exactly what this Trump administration has played with SNAP and with the American people during the shutdown. Millions of families have spent a couple weeks struggling to feed their kids because of this White House's deliberate choices. The human cost of this Republican shutdown and this budget proposal are staggering. And behind every number are kids and veterans and seniors all across America who are going to pay for these choices. Ranking Member DeLauro, I had a couple questions for you. First of all, just to go back, the chair and Mr. Cole have said that this CR funds the federal government at the same levels as during the Biden administration. Does that mean that it fully funds the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go back to USAID.
Okay.
I can go chapter and verse on programs that are not there. $410 billion terminated, delayed.
Okay, so it doesn't fund
No,
the Department of
it's not.
Education?
No.
No, and it doesn't fund USAID?
You got it.
And it doesn't fund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting?
No way.
And it doesn't fund all those NIH research grants that have been
But
cut?
cut. Absolutely
Okay.
cut.
How about
CDC,
the
FDA,
Okay.
a whole 9
So
yards.
it is not the same bill?
No. And they have allowed for the president and for Russ Vogt, an unelected bureaucrat, to really steal appropriated funds. And the CR does nothing about that. It gives them carte blanche to continue to do the same thing, which anybody who serves on an appropriations committee, quite frankly, needs to understand what role we have.
Well,
that is our role. And if the president wants to take it away from us, we need to fight like hell to make sure that they're done. Any president.
some would say that is something else that Congress could have been doing over the last 2 months, is protecting its right to allocate funding. With respect to the SNAP benefits, Does this CR that they're pushing through now, does that guarantee reimbursement to the states for funds they may have advanced?
No, it does not.
Okay, and the White House is fighting them about those funds.
That's right.
is that
Well, the White House is saying, take back the money that you've given to people. My state of Connecticut, when the court said get it all out, we did it.
Right.
And now they're telling Governor Lamont that he has to go back and get that, go get that money.
We
It's really
saw the same
extraordinary.
thing in
Right.
Pennsylvania. Has
Right.
any administration before this ever
Never.
tried to prevent states from helping their
No, it's happened in the past, and they
constituents?
have been reimbursed.
And they have been reimbursed. That's what I
It's the
thought.
first time that really food and has been used as a political weapon to deprive people of food, which is actually what's happened here.
Would the bill under consideration here, would it make SNAP payments mandatory in the future?
No, well, in the agriculture bill, this is, let me just take 1 second to explain. We passed the last go round where we had money for SNAP, which is mandatory funding. We then do a contingency fund there, and the president, actually President Trump, he signed a bill into law in March, which provided for $3 billion for the contingency fund. Biden had done it, before, so there's $6 billion in the contingency for an emergency. So to say that the government had to open before those is really misinformation, and quite frankly, it's a lie. It's a lie. But in the bill that's there, the agriculture bill, there is the money for SNAP, and yes, there's a $6 billion contingency fund.
Okay. Whenever we have a big bill like this, there are things that crop up in it, and one of the corrupt Easter eggs in the text of this bill is that it would allow certain senators to get payments from the federal government because a special prosecutor got a warrant that allowed the special prosecutor to investigate whether or not they participated in illegal efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Is that an appropriate use?
Well, first of all, it doesn't
appropriation
belong.
funds?
Speaking of things that don't belong in an appropriations bill, this certainly doesn't. But as I mentioned in my remarks, that this is really egregious. This was the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee taking the word of the majority leader and putting this piece in the bill without anyone knowing about it. Leadership, I didn't know about it, and I will just say my colleague, the chairman of the House Committee, didn't know about it. Mm-hmm. And the issue here is what the results of that is to allow, there's 7 or 8 people involved here that, and again, whether or not you believe what happened on January 6th, my God, how the heck can we just airdrop this stuff in the bill with nobody knowing on? But the price tag is potentially $8 million to pay off senators.
Okay. Look, I think the American people are smart enough to know who's fighting for them and who's fighting to line their own pockets and those of billionaires. Mm-hmm. This is a bad deal. It fails to extend the ACA premium tax credits. It fails to guarantee a vote to address the Republican healthcare crisis. It even fails to guarantee that states are reimbursed for stepping up and providing SNAP benefits that have been illegally blocked by this administration. We need a budget that protects all Americans. That's what governing and leadership is supposed to be about, and that's what Americans deserve. So I can't in good faith support this deal to reopen the government because it doesn't meet those basic standards. And I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy.
Thank my friend from Virginia. Good to see everybody back. Good to see you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. A couple things. There's been a lot of conversations here about the federal employees. Real quick question for the Ranking Member. How many employees would depart through attrition, whether it was under Biden or President Trump?
Yeah, well, overall, we've got, that's almost, I think it's now over 220,000 federal employees that were either fired, some took the voluntary buyout, which maybe is what you're talking about with the attrition piece, but over 220,000 federal employees. That started in January. It has nothing to do with a government shutting down and people furloughed, et cetera. These people were gone in a nanosecond here.
So question to Mr. Chairman, what I was getting at here is, for whatever the numbers are, 220,000 or variants, Mr. Chairman, would you agree that a very large number of those go every year by attrition, say over 100,000, that there was in fact this deferred program, right, where they were basically offered the ability to leave, which represents another large chunk, I don't know, 60 or 70,000 or some significant number. And then there are questions then of additional employees, whether it's RIFs and so forth. And in the question of the RIFs from October, which are post-shutdown, post-Democrat caused shutdown, that those RIFs are reinstated under this legislation, correct? To the ones post-shutdown, is that correct?
That's correct.
And all of the prior folks, we're talking about the vast majority are those that are either left through attrition or those who went out under the deferred program. Is that true?
That's correct.
So I think a lot is being made of that, and I think then the question becomes, well, what is the right number of employees? Right? I mean, so you've got people who are leaving under attrition. You have people who were then, they took a deferred program, they left, and the administration is trying to act. And then with respect to the RIFs and the decisions they were making in October, is that not the prioritization authority that the administration has during a shutdown to manage what they've got to on a cash flow basis to manage the functions of government?
I think that's correct. Let me add one thing, just an interesting wrinkle on this. And I just speak for my own district. We had people that wanted to take the buyout,
right?
That they literally, the government said, no, we're not going to. You're not going to be able to because you're mission critical. I mean, over 1,000 at Tinker Air Force Base wanted to take the buyout, but they were too important to keeping bombers in the air, tankers in the air, AWACS in the air. And the decision was made locally by the commanding general. No, we can't afford to lose you. I mean, you can leave, obviously. Any Americans can resign their position, but we can't give you a buyout. We really need you here. So, yeah, I mean, these numbers are a lot more complex than simple, which I think is the point you're making, than just stating a number and saying these people are all driven out. That's just not the case.
Well, and importantly, I think if you go from that to then the second area of concern, which we're talking about with respect to just the shutdown generally, true or false, on September 19th, we passed legislation that would have continued funding at current levels through November 20th.
That's true.
And on October 1st, the government entered shutdown because the Senate, by virtue of decisions by Senate Democrats, refused to take up and pass that bill, which undeniably would have continued to fund government at the current level beginning October 1 through November 20th. And instead, we entered a shutdown.
That's correct, although I always think it's important to note 55 senators, majority of the Senate, did actually vote to keep the government open.
And so important for the American people to understand that was a choice. And so I think when we talk about a shutdown, the question is why? Why? Why do it? Because here we are, and we've got legislation in front of us that Democrats have now supported in the Senate that return us effectively to the status quo ante, where we're going to have government funded out to another now date certain, now extended into January, because we're now into November, so we had to extend the date. We managed to move 3 appropriations bills through some degree of regular order, 3 bills in the House and the Senate. But by virtue of now passing this bill, we're going to restore where we would have been had we just done our work on October 1. So the question is, what was the last 45 days all about? Could it have been potentially the intervening political elections? Could that possibly have been the cynical motivations of the, not right now, I won't.
I was going to ask you a question.
Could it have possibly been the cynical motivations of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle? Just a rhetorical question that I'll leave floating out there to say, what were the reasons? We know why. Because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have nothing to run on. And our colleagues on the other side of the aisle want something desperately to run on. So they're trying to manufacture a healthcare crisis that they created. That's the actual truth. And with respect to health care, the question that I would ask is this: should we be putting forward legislation that will continue to fund the insurance companies at the level they're currently getting, where 85% of their revenues are coming from the federal government? Because that's what's happening. Or that $35 billion are going to insurance companies last year to go to the people that weren't even using their plans. Is that what we should be doing? Is that the healthcare system that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are saying that must be addressed by virtue of subsidies to insurance companies? Because President Trump had it right last week when he said, well, if you're going to do these subsidies, which is not how we would prefer to do business, then shouldn't it go to the American people to be able to go into a market and go be able to get the doctor of his or her choice, or get direct primary care, or be able to figure out how to take care of their family rather than call an insurance bureaucrat who's pocketing the money through a system that our colleagues designed and broke, and for which not one single Republican ever voted, including the subsidies that no Republican voted for, that were created to be temporary by our colleagues' own voice. They were to be temporary during COVID. And we are now to extend the very subsidies that my colleagues are laying bare, the broken healthcare system that they created. I remember all too well in 2013 being on the floor of the Senate with Ted Cruz when we were raising the questions of what would happen when this system were implemented. Because the debate then was whether we should fund the implementation of a system that would end up bankrupting the average American family, as this system has done. What I'm talking about is the reason. I'm talking about the reason that one would go to the Senate floor and say maybe we shouldn't do the very thing that right now is causing the American people pain.
15 years.
Because we talk about the constituents who are having pain. Yeah. How about my constituent who died last year, who couldn't go to MD Anderson because Obamacare doesn't cover it? Is that coverage? Is that the kind of healthcare system that people deserve? While insurance companies are pocketing extraordinary profits, off the charts
15 years
profits.
and you haven't come up with a plan for health insurance.
And health insurance,
15 years.
Health insurance executives are minting money.
Oh, God.
Minting money on the back of dollars coming from federal taxpayers and the federal government. And then our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have the temerity to come here and complain about the system they broke. That's what we're actually dealing with here.
It's about repeal of the Affordable Care Act. That's what this is all about.
Or the extent to which you've got
With no replacement.
Is it our time? The extent to which we are here because our colleagues know full well that this was a political exercise.
Oh.
To the chairman, we heard about SNAP. True or false, if we pass this legislation, will SNAP benefits proceed immediately?
Correct.
They could proceed.
So if we pass
now.
this legislation tomorrow,
Now.
Yeah,
SNAP funding will continue immediately.
correct.
While our friends at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue are trying to manage the funding of government, while our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have shut it down.
They're at
Correct?
the Supreme Court
Correct.
trying to end that.
Mr. Chairman, one last question. So our colleague brought up the big, beautiful bill. When we created and set out the big, beautiful bill, and we put into it components to deal with border security and defense, where we had $150 billion for each in that legislation, was that not beneficial for the executive branch to manage through such a moment as this, where our colleagues have shut down the government and they've now had additional flexibility with respect to dollars? Not all, it's not appropriations, I realize that, but they had additional flexibility to manage through it so that we could continue to secure the border and secure to defend the nation.
I wouldn't presume to speak for the administration, but that would be my opinion, that has given them the ability to make sure that we've been able to pay our troops twice, which would not have happened had they not had that flexibility and the president not made some tough decisions. So, yeah, I point out, I know everybody here is concerned about SNAP and WIC, and the president directed additional resources into those programs to the extent that he could during a government shutdown. So, I mean, the president's done everything he can to mitigate I think what our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have done, they haven't been able to do it in the House. I do stress this is a Senate deal that it's been the minority position in both chambers. But I appreciate what the administration's done to try and make sure the people that needed help got it, the people that deserved to get paid did get paid insofar as they could do it. But yeah, again, they can't do it indefinitely, and they can't do it for everyone.
Mr. Roy?
I think, Chairman, one last point that I want for the record. The Obamacare 2026 premiums, there's a great report that puts out that shows that only 3.3% of those premiums are affected at all by the COVID credits, that 97% of the premiums in 2026 will continue to flow as normal, and I'd like to insert that in the record. Thank you.
Mr.
Yield
Roy,
back.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Roy.
Roy. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you. I just have to start. Chairman Cole, I have a number of probing questions, but before I ask you some questions, I have to address some of the comments made by the gentleman from Texas. I'm just going to read a quote. And I do this because I actually don't think I could find a quote like this from Chairman Cole. So in some respects, although I disagree with much of his testimony, but he certainly has more clean hands than some of my other colleagues. Quote, "Let's not fund a government that's going to be exacting tyranny over our American brothers and sisters." Full length of the interview is available here, and some key quotes are below. This is from the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy's website, November of 2021. Should any Republican vote to fund an executive branch? In other words, should Article 1 Congress, which has the power of the purse as the founders gave us, should we give any dollars to the executive branch for President Biden to issue unconstitutional and unlawful mandates that are causing people to have to choose between their livelihoods and getting a vaccine which they don't want? Let's stand united. Let's not do what these 13 Republicans did last Friday and go side with Nancy Pelosi. Let's not fund a government that's going to be exacting tyranny over our American brothers and sisters. This is from Mr. Roy. Spare me. Hold on. No, Mr. Roy, it's my time. It's my time. You certainly made that clear with the chairwoman. Spare us. Mr. Cole, perhaps, I think, as I said, can have some clean hands to talk to us about this particular set of circumstances we find ourselves in. You cannot. There might be other colleagues of yours, I think, who might share Mr. Cole's worldview, but I don't know. I thought I've heard everything in Congress, but to hear my colleague from Texas, his indignation about the government shutdown as he instigated and tried to instigate shutdown after shutdown, just 3 years ago, 4 years ago. This isn't distant memory. In any event, I digress. Mr. Cole, how many days has the House of Representatives been in session since August 3rd?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
12 days sound about right?
Something like that.
I can represent to you that the House, since August 3rd, has been in session for a total of 12 days. I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Bannon. I suspect you are. Yes?
Never met him.
Never met him. You know of him.
If you read the newspapers, you know of him.
Yeah, I don't. It's not a trick question. You know Steve Bannon exists.
No,
all right.
I know who he is.
Okay, there was a report recently where Steve Bannon compared the U.S. Congress under Speaker Johnson to the Duma, allegedly. You think that's an apt comparison?
No, I don't.
No. Would it surprise you to know that the Duma has been in session longer this fall than the United States House of Representatives?
I don't know that the Duma sessions make very much difference.
Well, I'm not so sure they make much difference here, given the way in which Republicans are capitulating to every demand that President Trump makes. I think it is shameful that the House has been in session for 12 days since August 3rd. 54 days out of session. You cannot possibly, Chairman, you've been in Congress for some time. You can't possibly defend a 54-day recess, the second longest recess in the modern history of the Congress. You would defend that?
You should probably direct that sentiment toward the United States Senate.
The Senate decides when the House is in session?
No, if you'll let me finish my
Well,
my
no,
point.
because I don't.
My point is we sent a bill in plenty of time over to the Senate to keep the government open functioning. All these other issues you're concerned about could be addressed, could be debated.
Why not pass these bills?
Whatever.
Why not consider the bills on the floor? They're
But
approach
we're
bills.
waiting for the Senate to get back.
Why wait?
The Senate has now finally acted.
Okay, Mr. Cole,
Wasn't the Republicans that
I
kept it from
understand
acting.
that. I understand. You
Okay,
said that
that's
in
my
response
concern.
to Mr. McGovern. My question is, and this was what I think he was trying to glean from both you and the ranking member, there are plenty of appropriation bills that were passed out of committee. The House could have met the last week of September, any week in October, last week, yesterday, any time over the last 54 days. The House could be convened to consider these appropriation bills. John Thune doesn't get to decide when the House of Representatives is in session. Mike Johnson does. And I'm trying to understand from you why you've decided to take this position.
I
that
don't
essentially,
make these decisions.
I'll finish and then I'll let you answer.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Why you've
I
taken
thought you
this
had.
position that the House should effectively stay out of session. I mean, I guess this is your position, that if the government is shut down, the House of Representatives should not convene. Is that your position?
If we can open it by ourselves, which we had done.
Sure.
We had passed legislation, clean legislation, to keep the government open.
You've said that.
It went to the United States Senate, and you wait until they send you something back.
And do nothing else. That's
What?
my point. Do you know how many bills have passed out of committee this year that are sitting downstairs at the floor, the desk in the House? 150. 150 bills that have passed. Many of your colleagues here on the Republican side of the aisle, they have passed bills out of committee, along with bills that I've passed on veterans' health care, on issues of foreign policy, you name it. The House has refused to consider any of those for the last 54 days. I'm trying to understand why. Why not just say to the Speaker in October, you know what?
Call us back.
Speaker Johnson, it's time to bring the House back. We'll wait. You know, the Senate, you're right. The Senate's considering the bills that we sent them. They're considering the CR that you mentioned, right? That you've made clear, you passed it. I get it. But while we're waiting, maybe we ought to consider other matters, including the appropriation bills that you are so proud of that you moved out of your committee.
I am proud of them. I would be much happier if the Senate would just open the government
But you don't
and
have
we
to
can
wait for
proceed.
them. I don't understand.
Look,
I mean, honestly, I think I've got an answer to that question. I think you've answered it. And I
Okay.
think the answer is effectively that John Thune is in charge of the House calendar from here on out. That basically the position is, I mean, Mike Johnson has given his gavel. I thought he gave, I didn't ask a question, Mr. Cole.
I'm sorry.
I
thought you did.
I thought Mr. Speaker Johnson had given his gavel to the president. But it appears as though, at least based on your answers, that he gave it to Senator Thune. Because there is no excuse for the Speaker's decision to keep us out of session for 54 days. And by the way, this is
no excuse for the government to be shut down.
Mr.
You
Cole,
and your colleagues
that wasn't a
voted for that
question. I'll ask you.
repeatedly.
I'm happy to ask you a question because it seems like you are very comfortable with the House being out of session for extended periods of time. Is that a fair?
I am comfortable doing my job, and I've been here quite a bit, my friend.
I understand.
And working on these issues, quite frankly. But we didn't vote to shut down the government in the House.
Okay, you mentioned you've been here a long
and
time.
to be fair, my Senate colleagues didn't vote to shut down the government, and
Got
a
it.
majority of the
Got it.
United States
You've
Senate,
made that
including
position clear.
members from your party.
You've made your
did not
position
vote.
clear, Mr.
So
Cole.
I think the people that shut down the government
you said,
can take
you've made your
responsibility
position
for
clear.
shutting down
As
the
you
government.
said, you've been here a lot longer than I have, and that's certainly true. I've been here for long. I found an article. This is from 2007. You've been in Congress for some time. The headline, Cole, quote, "Now is not the time for a vacation," end quote. This is when Democrats had the majority in 2007. Congress must work through Memorial Day recess to produce a clean funding bill. U.S. Congressman Tom Cole today joined nearly every member of the Republican conference in sending a letter to then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, calling her to keep the House in session until Congress sends then President Bush a clean funding bill that he will sign into law. This was effectively, I'll just say, the letter was sent to Speaker Pelosi 8 days before Congress is scheduled to adjourn for the Memorial Day recess. Legislative business is not scheduled to resume until June 5th. I mean, you all were clamoring, demanding that the Speaker reconvene the House and not take a 10-day recess. And now what? We're in week 8 and we're finally here? And you won't say a word of criticism about the Speaker's strategy in keeping all of us?
I reserve my criticism for the people that shut down the government of the United States.
I
and
think
have kept it shut down for 40-odd days.
I think
and
it
have made
is-
sure recipients didn't get it. I've
I
made
think
sure
it's
people
rich.
didn't get paid. That's
Mr.
who
Chairman,
I'll
I think it's
criticize.
rich. Again, I would just simply say that if the shoe were on the other foot, I don't think, honestly, I don't think you would hesitate, to call the Speaker's actions disgraceful, to keep us out of session for 54
No,
days.
I'm
But
not
in any event,
calling.
that's fine. Let's talk about the last 54 days. So the Speaker, he said something that was fascinating. I thought it was a really interesting quote. If I can find it. Here we go. Yeah, that was interesting. So the quote is, House Republicans are doing some of the most meaningful work of their careers. They are in their districts. I don't want to pull them away from that. You agree with the Speaker's comments?
I don't speak for the Speaker, but I don't disagree with him. Look, we're waiting for
No.
the Senate
That's
to
not the
do its
question.
job.
That's not the question.
No,
You answered it. You answered it.
I don't
Okay, so Chairman,
disagree with the Speaker.
it sounds like you're saying that you agree that with the Speaker. Republican members were doing some of the most, quote, meaningful work of their careers during that 54 days. I assume you were here in Washington and back in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Right? Did you have any in-person town halls?
No.
None. 54 days?
Did several teletown halls.
Teletown halls. But you've done in-person town halls before. I know that to be true. Why not? 54 days is a long time. Not one town hall?
Nope.
Did you visit any of the federal facilities?
Oh, I've visited federal
in your
facilities. I've done multiple meetings with chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs. It's been highly visible.
I don't know if you heard my colleague, Ms. Fishbach. She took great umbrage at this notion that, that Republicans were somehow on vacation. Did you make it down to the Mar-a-Lago Halloween party?
No.
You didn't get the invitation to the Gatsby invite? No. I don't know. It would be interesting. I don't know if any of her colleagues here on the other side of the dais made it down there. It strikes me that it would be hard to describe
Guy went camp.
the last 54 days, at least from what I've seen, as meaningful work on the part of my colleagues in the House Republican Conference. But, again, those are that's something you'll have to defend, and folks will defend to their constituents.
I can defend
I wanna-
myself a lot easier.
That's
having
fine.
not voted to shut down the government.
Mr.
than I
Chairman,
suspect my
you've
friends
answered
that
the
have put
question.
Thousands of people
You've
out of
answered the
work,
question. Let's
denied
talk about,
people benefits.
Mr. Chairman.
That's what I would worry. I'm
Madam
glad I
Chair,
don't have
regular
to
order,
defend.
please. So I want to talk to you about the
I want
provision.
to ask the members of the Rules Committee not to interrupt the witnesses, please. And I hope, Mr. Neguse, you do have some questions, and yet you just don't want to harangue the chairman.
I'm far from haranguing the chairman. I'm giving the
Jesus
opportunity
Christ.
for the chairman to explain
Give
the
us a
meaningful
break.
work that he's been engaged in, and I suspect that he welcomes and relishes that. So I want to talk to you about the provision that my colleague from Pennsylvania noted earlier. And this is the provision that essentially allows specifically 8 Republican United States senators to reap upwards of a $500,000 payday with respect to the phone record notice provision that they've added into the bill. You support that provision?
I didn't have anything to do with it, didn't have any knowledge of it.
Not asking you if you have knowledge of it. Do you support it?
Yeah. Do I support the bill? Yes. Do I support every single provision of the bill? No.
You don't find this provision repugnant? I think most American people are going to find this pretty repugnant.
I was surprised to see it in the bill. I was unaware of it. It was not.
Why not work with us to remove it?
Let's see what you do.
Well, we've got an amendment.
I will tell you this. I am very concerned, and actually Democratic senators said this. I think particularly Senator Coons. I am very concerned that anybody, whether they're in the House or the Senate, is singled out and not notified that their records are being subpoenaed. That concerns me a great deal.
And does that justify?
Now, did I know about this provision in the bill? No. Do I think it needs to be in a funding bill? Not particularly. But do I think getting the governments open is important? Yes, I do. but I was unaware of the provision, so.
Well, there's an amendment that will be introduced
Well,
that I'm not asking a
member of
question,
this
Mr. Chairman.
committee.
Not asking you a question. Let me finish my statement,
I'm sorry.
and then you'll have an
I
opportunity.
apologize.
There will be an amendment proposed to remove what I think is a deeply insidious provision. I think it is outrageous for these Republican senators to effectively guarantee themselves $1 million paydays. Retroactive provision in this bill that very clearly applies to them. The removal of all relevant immunity defenses on the part of the United States government. This is insanity to allow this provision to go forward. And I would hope that my Republican colleagues would join us in supporting the removal of this provision. At a minimum, we ought to be able to find common ground on that. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Neguse. Mr. Langworthy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I, like all of you, are here in Washington today instead of celebrating the incredible veterans in our district and across the country. But as members of the Rules Committee, we begin the important process here in the House that will finally end this shutdown madness. I honor the veterans every day, and especially today. But the work we're doing here tonight and starting that work, and we'll finish tomorrow, will begin to end the turmoil that has made their lives and the lives of millions of Americans harder for more than 40 days. For over 40 days, the American people have endured a completely unnecessary and entirely avoidable government shutdown. Not because Congress couldn't find common ground, but because Senator Schumer and his allies turned governing into political theater. And you've heard a lot of political theater already here tonight. You've chosen performance over duty and outrage over outcomes. From day one, the House did its job. We passed a clean continuing resolution, a straightforward measure to keep the government open while the appropriations process continued. And I think Chairman Cole has really articulated that very well here tonight. It's the same kind of measure that Congress passed repeatedly in the Biden years. I voted for every one of those CRs, despite disagreeing with virtually all of the administration's policies. Because governing means putting your country before politics. And it keeps the lights on for the American people. We pay far too much in taxes, every American, for the government to not be responsive when they need it the most. And that's what responsible leadership looks like. And I'm sure if we dug into all of the tweets and the statements from all the different shutdown cliffs and crises that we've been in over the years, I mean, we would see all of my colleagues on the other side of the dais swearing up and down how it was the end of the world to shut down the government. But White House switches hands, and then they did what they probably said was the unthinkable, and they shut down the government. But this time, you know, even though we passed the bill in the House, the Senate Democrats refused to act responsibly. They saw an opportunity to score political points and to appease an angry faction within their own ranks. They decided to shut down the government, not out of principle, but to please the loudest voices on the far left. Now, let's be clear. This debate wasn't about spending. This shutdown is not about health care or any legitimate policy disagreement. It was an exercise in power, a stunt to divide and distract and delay. And while they were busy playing politics, it was the American people that paid the price. The hypocrisy has been staggering. We've all seen members of Congress, I've seen some in my own region, standing at a food bank, lamenting that nutritional assistance was lapsing and was interrupted. Then, in the very same press conference, they vowed against ending the shutdown.
Nothing to do.
How can you have it both ways?
You can.
How can you want to be seen as an honest human being where you stomp and you stamp and you have your temper tantrum and you say, my way or the highway. You acknowledge people are suffering and doing without. But then you say you won't vote to make that pain go away. How? if you want to present yourself as an intellectually honest individual, how can you try to have it both ways on this argument? The American people have suffered long enough. You've called it a Republican shutdown. Now you're furious that the shutdown is ending. It's not leadership. It's hypocrisy at its very worst. You're trying to say this is a health care bill about a policy that Chairman Cole has articulated about 19 times tonight is not involved in the funding levels of this government. There is plenty of time for a robust discussion to work together through the natural process where it belongs. Our VA employees have gone without pay. Our border agents, our Coast Guard, they've missed paychecks while still serving this country. Families depending on SNAP and WIC have been left wondering when they get food on the table. Air traffic controllers, by God's grace, we had no air disasters during this. A system that is already overstretched, that we are trying to modernize and fix and recruit more of. They've worked without a paycheck, and the American people have fortunately been kept safe. These are the real world costs of the political games. Real people, not anyone in public office, paid the price. Now, after weeks of pain and posturing, the Senate has finally discovered a breakthrough. But let's be honest, this is the same bipartisan agreement they could have passed 40 days ago, 30 days ago, 20 days ago. This deal could have been on the table any time they were ready to come to that table. But the only thing that changed was political timing. The only thing that changed. And that timing should not be lost on anyone. Anyone watching, any members of the media, as to how all of a sudden we get to this epiphany that now is the time. Because Election Day was a week ago. And some of their colleagues have said the quiet part out loud on TV. And they've said, we couldn't back down before our base turned out in blue states like Virginia, New Jersey, and in New York. And you're watching all of their colleagues get barbecued by that angry mob. But let's also be clear, this was never about health care. This was about another talking point and another distraction. And we can and we will have that full and honest debate about health care during the final appropriations process and throughout the budget year. But this shutdown was about one thing. It was about power. It was about Chuck Schumer and Democratic leaders trying to hold a government hostage for their own ambitions, to satisfy their angry mob that wants them to come back with a pound of flesh from President Trump. If Democrats want to let their angry fringe burn their party down, that's their choice. But we are not going to let them hurt the American people any longer in this process. We are not going to let them hold anyone hostage in the name of political chaos. And I want to thank senators on both sides of the aisle to coming to their senses and working together. And I specifically want to mention Senator Fetterman, who has said from the very beginning that you can support the health care policy efforts that many in this room are talking about tonight. But you could also do what's right and fund the government and take care of the people, which we swore an oath to do. He was the most plainly spoken, honest broker on the Senate side. And that's what courage looks like. So as we take up this measure here in the Rules Committee today and the House tomorrow night, we're doing what should have been done weeks ago. We're restoring order. We're reopening government. And we're putting the country first because that's what the American people expect and they deserve. To the veterans who have waited for benefits, to the workers who have missed paychecks, to the families who have worried about how to make ends meet, this should have never happened to you. You deserve better from your government, and politics disguised as principle. So today we will act, and tomorrow we will finish the job. We will bring this shutdown to an end once and for all, and we will send a message loud and clear that governing is not performance, it's a responsibility. Because this was never a shutdown of the government, this was a shutdown of common sense. And I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Langworthy. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, you're recognized.
Well, thank you so very much, Madam Chair. And it's so good to see everybody. Bienvenidos hace tanto tiempo. It has just been way too long, right? But it's been so long that, following up on my colleague, and I will now say friend, Representative Langworthy's comments about what is this about, let's remember how we got here. Because it has really not been that long for the American people, because we were here. Remember, in the middle of the night, just 5 months ago, while Republicans were jamming through a bill that caused a health care crisis. And now we're here because they refuse to solve a major part of that health care crisis, which is those enhanced premium tax credits that are rising, and they're doing it now. The reason we needed to act and act now is because people opened those bills, they opened those notices, and their premiums are going up. I mean, anybody watching, I don't know why people watch rules, but people do watch rules. Raise your hand if you are seeing your health care premiums go up. Because everywhere I go, people are seeing their health care premiums go up. And it's not just because they're letting them expire. It's what you did back in the dead of night, where you rushed through. We had to rush to make sure you gave those billionaire tax credits that are permanent. Those are permanent tax credits, which we had to pass before July 4th, but you couldn't bother to extend the tax credits for working families and businesses before the end of December. And you did it all by raising the deficit. Mr. Roy has passed, he's always talked about that darn deficit, $4 trillion. $4 trillion. You raised our, not just our health care costs, or everything, right? Insurance premiums, groceries, utilities, everything's going up. And you know what's interesting? Is that those tax credits that Democrats are fighting for are especially important for folks who live in rural and Republican-held districts. And it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene's adult kids that would see their health care premiums double. It's across everybody's district. Nearly 6 in 10 marketplace enrollees, people who benefit from these tax credits, live in congressional districts represented by Republicans. Chairman Cole, do you know how many folks in your district will see their premiums?
I think I've been educated about that tonight, actually.
And do you remember what it was?
It was about 48,000.
48,000. But you know what's interesting is your Health State's Insurance Commissioner actually thinks that 100,000 Oklahomans could no longer afford health insurance by the end of the year. I'm sure you know Glenn Mulready.
Mulready.
Glenn Mulready. You know what he
Mulready.
said? Mulready. So Glenn Mulready, your insurance commissioner, said he tried to talk to his delegation about how it's not a great idea to have these all just disappear, but maybe do it more gradually or do something. He said, I like this quote. He said, they weren't listening at that time, though. Did you talk to the commissioner?
I have not talked to him about this. We actually talk pretty frequently.
Okay.
He calls at least once a year to every member of the delegation. Again, I know him quite well.
What's interesting is right now we're in this moment where once a year is not enough because those health care premiums are going up. The president of the Oklahoma Hospital Association, he thinks it's even worse when you take into account everything. He said 300,000 Oklahomans will be affected. This is his quote. It's been a long time since we've seen individuals faced with the real challenge of deciding whether or not to take advantage of health insurance for themselves, their families, or go bare. And that's a close quote. And that's the thing about this. These are not just in Democrat districts. And what I love is that we are fighting because we don't care whether you're in a Democrat district or Republican district. What we care about is health insurance. And that's what this fight has proven, is that we care about whether or not you're going to be able to afford your health insurance. And you know what? When Representative Roy was talking about being a cancer survivor,
I wish you cared as much about whether or not my people get paid.
Right.
You know, whether or not the people that are working at Tinker Air Force Base, I wish you cared about them getting
but I didn't ask
paid.
you a question, Madam Chairwoman.
Well, I apologize, but
Thank you.
you were talking about my district, so
Yeah.
I thought I would express myself about my district and what they think.
We've heard you talk about that before, and I have 30,000 people in New Mexico who are federal employees, and I've been meeting with them as well. But I wanted to go to the fact that Representative Roy, who came and left so quickly, he was talking about cancer and how he's a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor. And he was talking about how the Affordable Care Act is so bad. But you know what? I'm a cancer survivor. And so if it wouldn't have been for the Affordable Care Act, I would not be able to get insurance. Because there was a pre-existing condition. You know what else I am? I am a woman. And because I was a woman and could have had babies, I would have also been a pre-existing condition. And these are the benefits of the Affordable Care Act. And the list goes on and on about why that Affordable Care Act makes sense. But what we also need to make it be is affordable. And we had a hearing. I'm the chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus. Together with members of the Policy and Steering Committee, we had a hearing. Well, Republicans were on vacation. Well, Republicans were gone. If you don't want to call it vacation, let's be honest, you were not here. But we were. And we held a hearing. And one of the most compelling voices, I mean, they were all compelling. We actually had to take out our tissue because we were crying so much. But one of those voices was Brick from Utah. Brick from Utah, who has a condition that he needs infusions. And the only way he can afford those infusions is through because he gets those tax credits. And he said, I want to work. And he went and talked to his representatives, and he tried to meet with his senators. And he did get to talk to Representative Kennedy, and Representative Kennedy's answer to him was, well, just go on disability. That's not an answer. That doesn't save the American government anything at all, because he wants to work. But you know what? We're going to have an amendment from Leader Jeffries and Whip Clark, I see her here, that's going to have a 3-year extension. And I'm supposing you wouldn't support that amendment. Is that right, Mr.
I don't have a vote on that amendment unless you get it out of here. So
right. But we could vote, and we will vote later on a 1-year extension, right? Just a 1-year extension, because we've heard the ranking member talk over and over again about that there are Republicans who want that 1-year extension. So we could do that as an amendment. I'll offer that as well. It's 14 of her colleagues. Do you know, what would a 1-year extension cost us, Chairman Cole?
I have no idea. We have no jurisdiction. This is not, with all due respect, can I finish my answer?
Sure.
With all due respect, we don't deal with this on Appropriations Committee. This is not our jurisdiction. It's not our issue. That's part of the problem here. You're trying to raise it on appropriations bills. This is a Ways and Means or an Energy and Commerce issue. It's not ours. And so to hold up the funding of the entire government over something that belongs in another committee, not ours, and you're basically holding our bills, not you, and frankly not the House, and not even a majority of the Senate. But our bills have been held hostage over something we have no jurisdiction over.
Thank you, Chairman Cole. You made that point earlier, but as we were here before, when you all passed it, this bill has tons of stuff that's not appropriations. And Ranking Member, I've heard it's about $23 billion for 1 year. That's about what it costs for 1 year. Is that right?
For 1 year, but it was 1 year.
I've asked Ranking Member, so.
And setting up a bipartisan commission, a bipartisan, to look into this and to address the issues that people may have some concern about. But a 1 year extension, give some relief to the people who are out there. And I quoted Connecticut, you quote your district, and we can quote everyone's district and what's happening to people out there today. And the notion that we can't take this up because the continuing resolution is what the Appropriations Committee does. Exactly. And we've got 50 pages of this document that deals with health care. If there were the willingness, the political will to solve this, we could do it, and we could do it very, very quickly. And let's not bifurcate continuing resolution to appropriations bills. It is all of one package. And it is incredible to me that we would watch people suffer everywhere to see what's going on with their rising health care prices, or their kids that are not going to be able to get the treatment that they need, and that just say, hey, you know, figure it out another way. No, that's not what we're about. And that really is what is so outrageous about the conversation and what is going on. Go ahead.
So, Ranking Member, I think that you're right on point. It's like, we can do this because we do it all the time. This bill is full of things, and we'll get to that whole idea of the payola for those senators in a moment, right? but I'm also struck by the contrast of priorities. The contrast of priorities. Democrats have been talking about the need to address health care, and it's not just since the shutdown. It was in that big, beautifully bad bill of theirs. Health care was key, and they could fix it now. But it's the priorities. $40 billion, I would think that's what is proposed to be sent down to Argentina.
Yes.
Chairman Cole, is that,
right.
Do you recall that?
No, I don't.
It's $40 billion.
$40 billion.
$40 billion. So that seems to be a priority. They will send $40 billion to Argentina instead of spending $23 billion to provide health care to Americans, and all we're getting is a pinky promise that they will address that, but they won't even support a 1-year extension, a 3-year extension, or a permanent extension. But let's get to the stuff that's not. Let's get to the stuff that is not probably appropriation, but what has been stuck in this bill that would provide those senators. It's like a payola. Like, what kind of bribe is that? Who gets 500,000 of violations? And that's why we're saying it's maybe $8 million. Senators are going to get $1 million, a couple of million, $500,000, and we're not going to give money to help a father pay for his health care? Is that what's going on here, Ranking Member?
Speaking of what doesn't belong in an appropriations bill, this doesn't belong in an appropriations bill. It's really, we have a review by an ethics committee that says that they can be paid off. We had it's just outrageous what's happened here. But in terms of the process, where it so violates what appropriations has done, it normally is the process where you get the 4 people involved that are the chairs and ranking members in the House and Senate, and you have a sign-off on the bills. First of all, that did not happen this time as well, and my Republican colleagues, the Senate, the Senate chair, they just went forward and posted the bills without having sign-off. Then this is secretly put it in the bill at the last hour with no one, including the House chair or ranking member, or I don't believe the ranking member on the Senate side. This was a sweetheart deal that was put in there that rips off the government and the people of this country.
And Americans think that the system is stacked against them.
And
when
is.
Republicans support giving payouts to senators in the millions of dollars, they can see why. But I'm going to give my Republican colleagues on this committee the opportunity to say this is not right. I will be offering an amendment to strip that entire section from the bill. We'll see what kind of courage the Republicans on this day have. Now, I am the last Democrat to be able to ask questions, so I wanted to just give the ranking member an opportunity to see if there was anything else she wanted to raise in response to some of the other issues that...
No, I thank the gentlelady very, very much. It's really been really incredible. And first of all, you know, everybody here is supportive of our veterans and so forth, and to if we really wanted to do something about taking care of our veterans and their health care, we would have, and you would have, dealt with the $51.7 billion in advance funding for our veterans through the Toxic Exposure Fund, which was done, by the way, in the Fiscal Responsibility Act several years ago, which we've done, and the ranking member of Milcon VA is here. And yet, there is advance money for medical care. But for the Toxic Exposure Fund, the answer is no. Why? You want to help veterans? This leads to me, when I see that there's no commitment on the Toxic Exposure Fund. And what we do and what we have done in the past, it really is, we have done advanced funding over the years. And we did. And as I mentioned earlier in my comments, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, Chair Judge Carter, a full day of negotiations. Quite frankly, it was one of the bright, shining spots of bipartisanship we had in going through the appropriations process, but that has been left out of this bill. Do you really care about veterans? Let's make sure they're taken care of, because they get caught in the crosshairs of this madness that we are currently involved in. I would also like to just say that I'm really tired and, quite honestly, fed up. It is a lie, it is misinformation that we had to reopen the government in order for there to be SNAP benefits to go to families. $6 billion in a contingency fund, which we voted for. Read the bill, understand what you did in the bill, and know what you did. You passed it, and it was the president who decided he did not want to spend that money to feed people. He's taken it all the way to the Supreme Court to deprive people and kids. It's 16 million kids. It's 8 million seniors. It's 4 million people who are disabled and 1.2 million veterans. You want to care for your veterans? Care for your veterans? Make sure that that money in that contingency fund is outflowing tonight and going, and not let them claw back, telling states, get the money back that you have given out. What is wrong with this picture? And I just say, if Mr. Roy were here, I would tell him, which he needs to understand. He needs to understand. He talked about a buyout. The buyouts were offered using money that government simply did not have. They signed contracts, buyouts with money that the Congress had not yet appropriated. That is unlawful. There is a lawlessness about this administration, and particularly where it affects the Appropriations Committee. They have been doing it from day one, and I love being on the Appropriations Committee as chair, as ranking member, and I, by God, am not going to give up one single bit of power that the Appropriations Committee has in order to be able to carry out our mission. And that is the $1.7 trillion that we deal with every single year for the services that the American people depend on. That's what we should be doing. And the power of the purse. Talk about a clean bill? No clean bill. They took back $410 billion from that earlier budget, and nothing is said about allowing them to continue to get away with this. An unelected bureaucrat, Russ Vought, who has the power to take that money away, which Tom Cole and myself and the other appropriators said we were going to pass because it makes a difference to our constituents. It is really unbelievable lawlessness that has been pervasive since January here, and that's something that we ought to really take back for the Appropriations Committee, but for the good of the American people. And the health care piece is absolutely the center of what this shutdown, yes, has been about, because that is a priority and it needs to be. Why? The last point I will make to you is, why now? Why now? Because the enrollment period is underway. It started November 1st. Why now? Is because everybody's got the letter in their hand saying $2,000 a month, my insurance is going up. I can't afford $24,000 a year. Why now? Because by December 15th, they must make the first payment so that they can have health care insurance on January 1st. That's what we are fighting for, and I'll continue to fight that battle every step of the way, despite what the United States Senate did yesterday.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member, and thank you for allowing me to ask that last question. And it is indeed a contrast in priorities. Prioritizing ballrooms and your bathroom, and whether you have marble or gilded gold, or providing the food that people need.
Food and health care.
To not distribute the money that Congress already sent over. And we should have had every Republican yelling at the White House to release those funds. And I did not hear them.
This is
and I
true
don't know,
colors
Chairman,
coming out.
I don't know, Chairman,
food
if you
and
went,
health care.
if you went to your food banks, but we did, and it wasn't performative. Mr. Langworthy. It was because people are hungry and that money was there and Trump refused to release it. And that is a disgrace. It is immoral. It is against every principle of faith and clarity that I have ever learned. And with that,
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Chair, I
Leisure
yield back.
Fernandez. Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too intend to talk about the Senate provision that they put in last night. I found out about it sometime around 9 o'clock. And I'll just be honest with you, Mr. Cole, I represent a lot of people that work for the federal government, Robins Air Force Base, Moody Air Force Base, USDA, I could go down the list. And I was very excited about coming back to Washington, D.C. to vote to open the government back up. And then when I saw what the Senate did last night, I'll be honest, I had a hard night. And I've been struggling with what the right vote is because of what the Senate did. And I want to just tell you, because I want the American citizens to be able to read it. You can start at page 217 of the legislation where it says requiring Senate notification for disclosure of Senate data. And there's a lot of with respect to's and other things in the first pages. But when you get over to page 223, you'll see where they've created a private cause of action, specifically for them. And it goes on and it says that cause of action, and this is on page 224, any senator whose Senate data or the Senate data of whose Senate office has been acquired, subpoenaed, searched, accessed, or disclosed in violation of this section may bring a civil action against the United States if the violation was committed by an officer, employee, or agent of the United States or of any federal department of agent or agency. Relief. If the senator prevails on a claim under this subsection, the court shall, not may, shall award for each instance of a violation of this section the greater of, not the lesser of, the greater of statutory damages of $500,000 or the amount of actual damages, reasonable attorney fees, cost of litigation. And it goes on from there. Now, there's other language in here, waiver of sovereign immunity, no qualified immunity. And there's other language in here, too, that indicates that each line would be an additional payment. And so most of us as members have a campaign phone, a campaign email, a personal phone, a personal email, and then a business phone and a business email. That's 6 violations the way they count it. If they went for all of them. 6. Minimum of $500,000 apiece. Now, I don't think, and I've been asking questions on this since last night, and I'm going to tell you, I don't think that Senate leadership shared with the leadership of the House what they were doing. Now, I want the Democrats to know this. My understanding is that Chuck Schumer was very much aware and signed off on this particular language as well. So just, y'all might want to ask questions about that. I'm just telling the truth on this. Is as soon as I found out about it, I started asking questions. But they're saying, well, the executive branch shouldn't be checking up on the legislative branch. Well, there's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to it. I believe in the separation of powers. And they talk about it being good governance. The thing that I can't get past, though, and this is, again, I mean, for the American citizens, if you go to page 227 of the bill, limited retroactive applicability. In general, the amendments made by this section shall apply to any acquisition, subpoena, search, accessing, disclosure of Senate data as defined in Section 10A of the Legislative Branch Appropriations Act of 2005, and to any failure to disclose such an acquisition, subpoena, search, accessing, or disclosure occurring on or after January 1 of 2022. So it's given them the ability to retroactively go back. We know, you literally know who, at least We may not know all of them, but we at least know the list of some of them. In this paragraph, the term violation section 10 is the meaning given to the violation section. It goes on from there. But there's also language in there where it indicates that each account is a separate payment. Now, this language did not go through any committee markup. This language was not shared with the House of Representatives prior to it being put in the bill. And I personally agree that it should be removed. The problem is if we remove it, the Senate, it has to go back to the Senate. And then you're right back to where you were 40 days ago, where all of a sudden you're trying to get a piece of legislation out of the Senate. And so, I mean, I've struggled. I want you to know that, Mr. Cole. I want the American citizen. I've struggled with what the right course of action here is because what they did is wrong. This should not be in this piece of legislation. And they can say it's about good governance all they want to. When they made it retroactive, then all of a sudden it was no longer about good governance. There's actually a list of people that know they will get paid as soon as this thing is signed. At least they've got the coupon where all they have to do is go file at the courthouse and get paid. And I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do. My gut is, because of the way this place is so dysfunctional now, that the right thing to do is to get the government cut on as soon as possible and make sure that the American citizens are watching what those senators do and hold them to account for what they did. And at the same time, the House put legislation out that actually reverses what the Senate has done. They should vote on this in the light of day. If they think this is the right thing to do, then they should have a committee meeting and a straight up or down vote on it. Don't hold my people who work in my district at Robins Air Force Base paycheck any longer than it's already been held. And so I want you to know, Mr. Cole, you're our chair. I respect you tremendously, as much as I respect anybody in this House, and as much, I mean, I can take everybody I ever met. I have tremendous respect for you. You are a man of integrity and honesty, and when you tell me you didn't know, I trust you. And when Mike Johnson, when I'm asking questions about it at 9 o'clock last night, I don't think our side knows. I think the Dems and the Republicans in the Senate knew, though. I do. I want you to know that. And but this is, I mean, the American citizens just need to read it, and they can figure it out for themselves. It's not that hard. It's big letters. It starts on 217. It ends on 228. It won't take you 10 minutes to read it, and you really can pretty much start where the private cause of action is discussed. But that would never pass if that was a standalone piece of legislation, and it is clearly authorizing an Appropriations Act.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'll be happy to yield to Mr. Roy.
I just want to add that I share the concerns of the gentleman from Georgia. I do not think that this provision should have been inserted. It certainly shouldn't have been inserted at the 11th hour without deliberation and back and forth. I do believe that the gentleman's correct, that there were Democrats and Republicans involved with it. But I think there's going to be a lot of people, if they look and understand this, are going to see it as self-serving, self-dealing kind of stuff, and I don't think that's right. And I understand, I think some of the motivations were to try to target a DOJ that I think was fairly obviously abusing its authority and targeting United States senators, separation of powers concerns, all the things. We can debate all that. But, we think it was pretty egregious, so I have no problem with the prospect of going after and trying to empower, even through private right of action, a way to go, because we do it in other contexts, consent decrees and other things. But the retroactive, potential to have dollars going to United States senators, when we've got American citizens, whether it was J6ers, whether it was people from the FACE Act, whether it was others that have also had the full force of the federal government through the Department of Justice targeting and coming down on them, and they're going to see, but you can slide in a provision in here for United States senators? Like, it is beside my comprehension that this got put in the bill. And it's why people have such a low opinion of this town. I am torn also, the gentleman from Georgia, because we need to fund the government and we need to get this passed. And I'm trying to figure out what we can do to force the Senate's hand to say you're going to repeal this provision and fix it without amending it here to then delay the funding of government, which we want to proceed to go move forward with. But that provision needs to get fixed. And we need to find a way as a body to get it fixed as soon as possible. And I'm continuing explore the options tonight. I yield back to the gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Scott, would you yield?
I just want to point out it's $500,000, and the way it's written, it is a minimum of $500,000. It is per line. It is and Ms. Ledger Hernandez, I'll give you 60 seconds. But I think it's time. I think it's time to move on. I just don't.
I truly appreciate your very careful consideration and review for the American people of this. As you know, I do have an amendment to strike the whole thing, and I think it would send a great message if you would actually say, "I'm going to vote for this amendment." Allow it.
And this is why I didn't want to get into this debate. The problem is, if we could take it out and send it to the Senate, and know that the gamesmanship wasn't going to be played over there, and the government would get cut back on, I'd be glad to. But the bottom line is, if we amend this bill with anything at all, we risk extending the shutdown, air traffic controllers not being paid, law enforcement not being paid, our staffs here not being paid, and that's a risk that I don't trust.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't trust just the Democrats. I don't trust the system to work where we could fix it with what probably a supermajority of this committee thinks should be done and not delay the government coming back on. And with
So
that,
I would only point out that it's not, if you would, I just wanted to finish, will you give me 15 seconds?
yes.
So it says each violation, and so the violation isn't just each telephone, it's each time it's requested. So it could multiply much higher than that because it's by violation.
That is my read as well.
Yeah, we agree on that.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair? I just want to state for the record, it's another reason why the House and the Senate should be in session during a shutdown. Maybe this could have been avoided.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Griffith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, am very concerned about those sections. I will tell you, I've already made the decision that I will vote for this bill and not vote for any amendments because the shutdown needs to end. It's been going on too long. Too many of my people are hurting, and we got to get it. We got to get it done. There's some other issues in here, not as egregious, but at least it was done in the light of day with a vote. But the hemp issues, that was a fight between gentlemen in the Senate from Kentucky, both of them fighting each other. I don't agree with the solution they came up with, but I'm voting for it because I've got too many people that need the government to open. And therefore, notwithstanding, we're going to hear some great amendments, I'm sure, but I'm not voting for any of them because we need to get this thing done, and then we can start negotiating on other things. Now, Mr. Cole, Mr. Chairman, you've said this a couple times. I want to underline it because it's exciting for me to hear it coming from the Appropriations Chair. Because one of the things as now a longtime member of the Energy and Commerce Committee that drives us crazy is that people want to airdrop. This didn't just happen. This happens when we're here in session. It didn't happen because people weren't here. It happens all the time between the House and the Senate on bills that come out of appropriations. And you haven't done it, to the best of my knowledge, but they create programs that are never authorized by the authorizing committees. And you're absolutely right. When it comes to the premium enhanced tax credits or the enhanced premium tax credits, that's the jurisdiction of Energy and Commerce, Ways and Means, and Ed and Workforce. They overlap. Different pieces of it belong to each of those. And of course, the bill that they keep talking about, that they claim took all this money away, that came out of the Budget Committee. That didn't come out of appropriations either, the reconciliation bill. And I just appreciate that you're recognizing that's not the proper jurisdiction. And before we had the shutdown, I wrote a whole column on how we could reach some kind of an agreement on a glide path. But I also pointed out in several, and I've had several columns where I've talked about this. I do a weekly column, that we have 20% on the enhanced premium tax credits. We have what is pretty darn clear, 20% shadow enrollees. Now, if you will bear with me, Mr. Chairman, tell me if you disagree with this. What we see is normally in an insurance plan, you have 15% of the enrollees don't use their insurance in a given year. That's been for decades, and some years it may go up 0.2 or down 0.2, but it ran around that 15%. With the enhanced premium tax credits, we see 35% not using it. And here's what I believe is happening, and I think most experts agree with this. You tell me if you have any disagreement. Jump in, Mr. Chairman, and tell me if you disagree. What happened, because it was an emergency piece of legislation during COVID, because they wanted to help people that were having a hard time, they didn't put in all the checks and balances. So you don't have to re-enroll. It's an automatic re-enrollment because it was only going to be a 5-year program. And what could happen, and the theory I use and the example, the hypothetical I always use is, if you live in North Florida and you happen to go to a grocery store or a mall and you get enrolled, and then 6 months, 8 months, 9 months later, you move to South Georgia and you go to the mall or the grocery store and you get enrolled, most citizens of the United States would think, well, I'm enrolled now in Georgia, so they've canceled my program in Florida. But that's not happening with the enhanced premium tax credits. And my frustration with this argument for the last 40 days has been, open up the government and we can figure this out, because as the Health Subcommittee Chair on Energy and Commerce, I don't want us to continue to waste 20% of our money that we're spending. It's billions of dollars. I don't want to continue to waste 20% of that money that doesn't go to help a single enrollee. It goes to the insurance companies, and they're getting the money. They don't know whether the people really exist or not either, because there's no way to check, and it keeps rolling on. If we do a 3-year extension without some way to check, or a 1-year extension, which our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have recommended to us, either a 1-year or a 3-year extension, we're going to continue that 20% waste. We're going to waste the taxpayer dollars. That doesn't mean I don't want to help people who are trying to struggle. And even for some of those, Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that 10% of the people are receiving these benefits are over the 400% poverty level, which means they're making $106,000 a year. And maybe in some of the rich districts in the country, that doesn't seem like much money. In my district, where the average household income is just over $50,000, we haven't quite reached 51 yet. That means they're making pretty good money, and yet we're not even looking at doing that. Now, I'm not saying we take that away 100% the first year. We got to take a look at that. That's what needs to be negotiated. But that was never part of your bill. That was in my jurisdiction. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. And to the gentleman's point, go back, a totally separate bill, but you'll remember toward the end of last year, we were working hard. A lot of our fellow Americans were hurting from hurricanes. We're doing a disaster relief bill. The Appropriations Committee did a little over 100 pages and spent about $100 billion, I think 110 because we added $10 billion for ag. That bill was 1,500 pages long when it hit the floor. None of us were consulted on the Appropriations Committee about this. And honestly, it had some stuff I probably would be for, like PBM reform, and it just didn't belong with us. And matter of fact, we caught a lot of grief on the floor from both sides of E&C because what were you doing? We didn't. It blew up because people look at a bill that big and they go, "What in the hell is in 1,500 pages?" And again, my committee didn't have any. Now, in the end, what we passed was what the Appropriations Committee did, which was a little over 100 pages. But all the rest of that stuff was loaded on us. This is, so it's not like they even come and ask us. So I've had some pretty stern discussions with our leadership about this. But it's true on both sides, and it's true with other committees. I mean, other committees use us as the mule. I don't recall anybody carrying an appropriations bill to help us out on E and C or Ways and Means or anyplace else.
Don't
We
give us
do
any
our work.
ideas, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so believe me. So I agree with gentleman's point. I would prefer these things go to the committees that have the expertise, and they move the vehicles, not us. Not because it's a must-pass, we got a fun deal. If it's a good bill, and if it's bipartisan, like PBM reform, I guess was, from everything I heard, then why couldn't it trot out there on its own? Why did it have to be part of ours and confuse everybody about what we had in the bill that we had no hearings, no jurisdiction on, or anything? So that's an institutional problem, and I would say I see it on both sides of the aisle.
Yep.
It's something that we're trying to stay away from.
And I appreciate you working on that because, as you know, and it's part of why my colleague, Mr. Scott, is frustrated with the way this place works, because we have rules and then we don't follow those rules. And if we follow the rules, I don't think we'd be in this spot, because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are correct. We've dumped all kinds of things before in appropriations bills, but that doesn't mean it was right. And in this case, you gave us a bill that dealt with appropriations, kept us open for 7 or 8 weeks, and I submit to you, Mr. Chairman, I think at least on the part that was, I don't know about the part with Ways and Means and Ed and Workforce, but the part that was in Energy and Commerce, I think we could have hammered something out. But the number one concern that I have about just doing this blanket and claiming, oh, we're saving health care, is the 20% that's going to the insurance companies. It's not a question of, which side of the aisle you're on. We're giving 20% of the money that we're spending on the enhanced premium tax credits directly to the bottom line of insurance companies, because they don't know whether it's Joe Smith or Jane Doe or somebody else, but they know pretty much based on statistics over decades that there are 20% shadow enrollees. And if we don't fix that waste, we are not doing a service for the American people. We are not keeping track of the dollars. And it's a shame that it got wrapped up in this. It was fake from the beginning, in my opinion. We could have worked on it. We could have passed the CR. And while some people say it wasn't clean, and technically it had some other stuff in it, but none of it was stuff the Democrats opposed. Telemedicine, federal qualified health centers. I mean, there was some good stuff in there that belonged in an appropriations style bill. And it's all in here, is it not, Mr. Chairman? All that stuff we had in the original CR is still in here.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as those programs are concerned. And yet, because some folks wanted to make it all about health insurance, which was not what this bill was about, was it?
No, sir.
And didn't actually want to deal with resolving the issue in a responsible legislative manner, working through the proper committees, we've been shut down for 40 days. And that then ties my hands tonight. I can't vote for amendments that I might otherwise think are appropriate, and I can't vote for amendments that I think are not only appropriate, but are truly justified, not just marginally, but by 2/3. I cannot vote for them because I want to get this shutdown over. There are too many things being impacted in my district, and I'm sure in other districts too. I can only speak to my district, but having one of the most economically challenged districts in the country, I heard somebody say something about suffering. I'm just going to tell you, I looked it up, and that individual said we had to have a little suffering. They're like 29th. I'm 409th out of 435 on household income. I got enough suffering without the federal government adding to it. So I will be voting no on all the amendments, and yes to get this thing across the finish line.
But the gentleman yield one second.
I will yield to
1 second, which is this. You made a stat I want to make sure everybody understands. You talked about the 15%, a number that you said was an historic number.
It's over the decades. It's roughly
as it relates to enrollees who don't file a claim, right?
That's
so
correct.
About 15%. That is for private plans, but that was also the number, give or take a percentage point, for Obamacare plans prior to the COVID subsidies, when they then bumped from 15 to now 35 to 40%. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. And the other thing that drives me crazy, I would say to the gentleman, is that everybody talks about these subsidies, and a lot of my folks are afraid that their basic Obamacare ACA subsidies going away. That was never threatened. That was never in question. The only thing that's in question is the emergency program that was put in for a 5-year period that is the enhanced premium tax credit, not your basic ACA subsidies, the enhanced premium tax credit. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Jack, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And as the last thing between this panel and the amendment panel, I recognize that I will be brief. But I will say just from the outset, first I want to commend my colleagues' comments, and I want to commend the chairman's testimony. I also want to note, I'm proud that Congressman Langworthy noted that it is Veterans Day, and I want to note from the outset we have 79 veterans serving in the House, Republicans and Democrats, some of whom are in the room. We thank you for your service, and we thank the millions of Americans who served in our uniform for your service on this important day. Chairman, in closing, if you could just tie everything together from this hearing, the vote tomorrow, it's a binary choice to open the government or to prolong this shutdown. And we've talked a lot about what this bill actually does, and we've heard the other side comments on what they think it does. I want to give you a chance to close out and remind everybody what this bill principally does tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and I appreciate the attitude. And honestly, I won't say tonight's hearing made me miss the Rules Committee, but it does remind me how grateful I am to all of you on both sides of the aisle for what you do here. And I mean, that's true. Look, I think it is a pretty simple choice. Tomorrow, there are parts of every bill that I don't like. If I got to write everything, then I'd love everything in it. If I didn't have to get things through the Senate, I'd probably. But basically, this is about reopening the government. We got 3 bills that we broadly agree on. We don't agree on every single thing in them. There's certainly some things, but they were negotiated out mostly by the subcommittee chairs and ranking members. There were relatively few issues that went up to us. They're all either flat spending or slightly reduced. Those are 3 good bills, and in those 3 areas, they'll protect us from disruption of service for SNAP and WIC. They'll take care of our military construction. They'll make sure that the Capitol Hill Police and our staffs and people get paid through September 30th. So that's actually a good start on the appropriations process. The CR buys us back the time and then a little bit more that I would argue we've wasted in the last several weeks. Gives us to January 30th. We'll try and negotiate another package of bills, maybe 2 or 3 more. I mean, that's something the 4 corners have to get together and decide, but we're ready to negotiate on all 12 bills, with 3 across the floor, all of them out of committee. We literally, once they're out of committee, we can negotiate. We know we didn't write the final version in the deal, and if you look at our bills, they're a lot different than sometimes characterized in the press. We're not as far apart from the Democrats or from the Senate as you might think. So we'll try and get those things done. We've got some really important bills there. Defense and labor aid, probably the 2 most important to get done. But this will give us the time to do that. I would say we've gone through this process, in my opinion. Others would have a different, because we're trying to deal with things have been dumped into the appropriations process that have nothing to do with it. I mean, we do not decide Medicaid. That is not our business or our wheelhouse. We do not decide the subsidy issues. Like everybody here, if you're on the relevant committee, then you're hands-on, and the rest of us have a vote when you produce a product and we go to the floor. So I'm going to have a vote on those things. They're dealt with. But you shouldn't be holding up. Neither side should. Both sides have done this over the years. So I don't, it's not like anybody's got clean hands here. But we've seen this enough. It doesn't work. You don't hold up the funding for the government to achieve an unrelated objective. We tried to do it with the repeal of Obamacare. It crashed and burned. Now, we were smart enough to get out of it in 16 days. I didn't think anybody would ever be dumb enough to go beyond 16 days. We're at 42 now. And then we tried to do it, really the administration tried to do it, over building the wall in 2018 and 19. Democrats tried to do it over DACA, didn't work. They're trying to do it now. Not going to work here either. This is just a bad strategy. Shutting down the government to achieve an unrelated objective is not likely to be successful. It has not been successful. If we pass this tomorrow, and it comes out of committee tonight, obviously you guys have the first decision, I think that hopefully puts another nail in the coffin, and we don't do this anymore. Let's just make the government run. The people that I care, they may care very much about what my friends care about on the insurance, but some of them undoubtedly do. Most of them just want to go, if I go to work, can I get paid? If I'm doing important work for the government, keeping airplanes flying or, helping our guys train for drones or whatever, I just want to get paid. Or I've got a uniform on and I'm willing to go to really bad places for my country. I'd like to know my family at home is going to get a paycheck. That's really bad. This is the day-to